Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thami Mbongo. You are watching State of the Art with Thami Mbongo. Thank you to everyone that has subscribed to our channel, and we encourage those who have not yet subscribed to please do so in our YouTube channel. Today's guest is none other than Lesego Van Niekerk. We're going to talk to her to find out more about the dance world and her involvement. Please like or comment in our video so that we know what are your thoughts. This is State of the Art with Thami Mbongo. Mbongo mbuyisa ungalesi ndimo sondisa umvimnyama wazola komanzana okhumalo umntungwa omdleke ngalomazo ndithi to show State of the Art with Thami Mbongo. Danko.
Yeah, well, that night when we were all anticipating the reshuffle, I don't know. I didn't realize that it was going to affect me as much as it did. Obviously, we've ran the petition, which I was an initial signatory of, the Nathi Must Go petition. We've been heavily involved in campaigning against his administration, just simply because he's really not coming to the party. So that particular night, I think there was a lot of, pressure in the air when it comes to us as performers. And is the president going to hear us? Because we've put in so much effort in trying to get him to hear our pleas. And then he did not do what we thought he would do. And I remember sitting and looking at the television for a good 10, 15 minutes afterwards thinking, no, man, I'm sure he's going to come back. I'm sure he forgot that he needs to do something. Maybe iPad, I don't know. Maybe they missed the notes. I don't know what happened, but it didn't happen. So I went to bed with a broken heart, to be quite honest. And I kept replaying that memory in my mind, which I play quite often, particularly over the last year with what's been going on in our creative sector. And I remember it quite vividly, it was quite a wonderful event. In that particular event, I believe we sang happy birthday to him because it was around the time that it was his birthday. So it was a special time, and getting to engage with him personally, and just the realization that he was the person that was responsible for all of our jobs. It was the dancers, the singers, the choreographers, the stage managers, the backstage crew, the lighting designers, the technicians, everybody. He was the one that formalized our paycheck, basically. So to then come back all these years later and to almost feel forgotten by him, it was a weird moment for me. It was very weird. Yeah, well, that night when we were all anticipating the reshuffle, I don't know. I didn't realize that it was going to affect me as much as it did. Obviously, we've ran the petition, which I was an initial signatory of, the Nathi Must Go petition. We've been heavily involved in campaigning against his administration, just simply because he's really not coming to the party. So that particular night, I think there was a lot of, pressure in the air when it comes to us as performers. And is the president going to hear us? Because we've put in so much effort in trying to get him to hear our pleas. And then he did not do what we thought he would do. And I remember sitting and looking at the television for a good 10, 15 minutes afterwards thinking, no, man, I'm sure he's going to come back. I'm sure he forgot that he needs to do something. Maybe iPad, I don't know. Maybe they missed the notes. I don't know what happened, but it didn't happen. So I went to bed with a broken heart, to be quite honest. And I kept replaying that memory in my mind, which I play quite often, particularly over the last year with what's been going on in our creative sector. And I remember it quite vividly, it was quite a wonderful event. In that particular event, I believe we sang happy birthday to him because it was around the time that it was his birthday. So it was a special time, and getting to engage with him personally, and just the realization that he was the person that was responsible for all of our jobs. It was the dancers, the singers, the choreographers, the stage managers, the backstage crew, the lighting designers, the technicians, everybody. He was the one that formalized our paycheck, basically. So to then come back all these years later and to almost feel forgotten by him. It was a weird moment for me. It was very weird. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I'm very proud of where I come from, and wherever I go, I always lead with I am Lesego from Middleland, Soweto, because for me, it's important that people that look like me come from where I come from, the same streets. For me, it's important that they know that they can really be anything they want to be quite honest. And I have to be honest that I was also very lucky to be nurtured, to be in the company that I was in terms of, my family and the schools that I went to. So I know that not everybody that comes from where I come from is privileged enough to have those kind of things. I will say, though, that I attribute the start of my career to the street that I grew up in, Middlelands, the Khotsane Street. I attribute my career to that because when I was 17, when I was in matric, my uncle asked me what I want to do with my life, because he could sense the confusion, whether I'm going to dance, am I going to study something academic, what am I going to do? And he was picking up my uncertainty. So he asked me that day, and I told him the truth. I said, Uncle, to be quite honest, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said to me, let's take a walk. And we left the yard and we walked down the street. And he stood in the street and he ashapa flate, and the guy Thabo Komape came out. Thabo Komape is one of the original cast members of African Footprint. And Thabo Komape, I had no idea who he was. I had no idea he was even a dancer, along with some legendary people like Thabiso Kuba, Franz Ramova. He comes from that time. And I met Thabo. My uncle introduced me, said, this is Thabo, he dances for African Footprint. First of all, my mind was blown because I was like, oh my God, I'm meeting somebody who's in this show. I never thought that I could even breathe in the same direction as people on that level, And then my uncle told my Thabo what I do. She's a young dancer. She's at the National School of the Arts. She's in matric. She doesn't know what to do. Do you have any advice for her? And lo and behold, Thabo then let me know in that moment that African Footprint is having an audition a few months later. So it was in the streets of Middlelands that I actually got my breakthrough. And obviously you have to follow up on the breakthroughs. But yeah, I think miracles can happen. It doesn't matter where you come from, whether you come from Sandton or whether you come from Mikuvletu or wherever you come from. I think it's also a matter of purpose and really understanding who you want to be in the world. And if you really trust that and you just trust it with your all, I really do think that you will get led in the right direction. The same way I got led to go down the street that day, and now I'm here, Yeah, the Black Corner, basically last year, 2020, was a very difficult time for everybody. First of all, we were propelled into a national lockdown, but then also the Black Corner was sparked during the time when George Floyd was murdered in America. And his murder basically, it shook us all up around the world, particularly people of color. And there was a huge revolution of Black consciousness, and there were protests and marches, and it was very busy in the street and on social media, And I remember a friend of mine, a choreographer on Broadway in New York, he shared a post on Facebook because obviously he was in America, so he was right in the middle of what was going on with the whole George Floyd thing. And he shared a post on Facebook that's titled, there's white privilege, then there's also white theatrical privilege. And then under that, it was listing all the white theatrical privileges that happen. For instance, white people have a better chance of getting into a musical than Black people in this country. I'll give an example. When I was in Chicago, there was only me. I was the only woman of color, Black woman ensemble, and the rest were white women. So, that's just one of the things that's tokenism, really. It's called tokenism, where you end up being the token Black person. So those are the kind of things that were listed in that post. And I was very moved by it because I know that I've experienced anti-white privilege in my case as a musical theater performer. So I pressed the share button on Facebook, and I did not expect the reaction that I got from my industry peers, professionals, very well-known singers, dancers, actors that came onto my post and were commenting and reacting. So I realized that actually this is a common problem. It's not just me. It's just that we don't speak about it. So you think that you're alone. So a friend of mine called me and he said, do you realize what you've done on Facebook? You've shaken things up. And I said, I realize, and that was not my purpose. I was just sharing something that I felt was touching my heart. So he said, look, you've opened a can of worms and I think you should take it further. So what started as an idea to do a very easy podcast with like a cell phone ended up in a proper 4-part series with an entire production team. And I turned my house into a studio. It was quite crazy. And we did that because we realized that the issues that we wanted to cover in the Black Corner are so multifaceted. It's not just one little issue. There are so many issues when it comes to being a person of color in entertainment. Particularly in musical theater, because that's what the show was focusing on. So we decided to take the series and divide it into 4 sections. The first episode was Where Did It Come From? And we interviewed award-winning actress Ilse Klink, along with Broadway choreographer Gregory Butler. And basically that episode was about where does it come from? Because in 2021, as performers and people of color, we still have issues, but those issues did not start in 2021. Where did it come from? So that's what we spoke about. And I also invited Gregory Butler from Broadway. And people always ask me, why Gregory? And that's because a lot of us know that when we do these musicals in South Africa, especially the blueprint musicals, so they take the exact product as it is. For instance, Chicago the Musical, Matilda, Singing in the Rain, all of these musicals. When it's a blueprint, they take the team out from Broadway, the choreographers and directors, they bring them here to South Africa, and they position them here with us, the cast, for about 5 to 6 weeks. And in that time, we are basically groomed by them. So in essence, Broadway directly affects our musical theater industry here in South Africa, because even though they leave us after those 5, 6 weeks, they've instilled their principles. So I thought it would be a good idea to bring Gregory on to explain to us how it happens in Broadway and to see if there are any connections. And there are huge connections, because people of color are people of color. Doesn't matter where you are. At the end of the day, we look the same. So our issues are generally going to be the same. So that was the first episode, and we unpacked those kind of things. And they both come from a previous generation. So they were able to give better perspective than myself, who comes from a more, this kind of generation. The second episode, we then called it How Do You See Me? And How Do You See Me is about representation. How do you see me as a Black person? You people in show business that are responsible for putting me on stage, So we had producers Levo Toko and Clive Matibe, along with international producer David Block, to talk to us about, as producers and people who actually create these shows and these musicals, what goes through your head when you look at people of color? When you give me the role of the maid, when I don't necessarily have to be the maid, because there are so many other people that can be the maid. What is it that makes you decide that? When you decide to hire me as the only person of color in a cast of however many people, we are in a country where 83% of the population is Black. But in a cast, only 1% is Black. What are the thought processes behind something like that? So that's what we unpacked in episode 2, which happens to be my favorite episode, by the way. Episode 3, we spoke about the little things. And in the little things, we basically talk about the everyday, what do they call them? Passive-aggressive things that happen to people of color that people don't even realize they're happening. For instance, the amount of times that women of color in entertainment have to explain their hair. I can't tell you how many times I've stood in a lineup of female performers, and let's say all 9 of them are white, and I'm the 10th person and I'm the Black one. And the choreographer, the director, whoever it is, will look at the line and get to the end of the line and look at me and say, so what are we going to do with your hair? And for me, it's those little passive-aggressive things that happen on a day-to-day basis for Black people that we don't speak about, but they break our spirit, Double standards as well, It's known, the African time thing is heavily associated with Africans of color, people of color. So if a white person gets to rehearsal late, chances are something happened to them for them to be late. But if a person of color is late, African time, because, Black people, they can't hold time. So it's also those double standards that we were covering in that episode. And finally, the final episode, which is does the show go on? We basically talk about how do we move forward now that the cat's out the bag and we've spoken about these white theatrical privileges. As this generation, what is our plan? How are we going to tackle those things? So we spoke about things like the need for Black people to create their own platforms, but also the need for non-people of color to tackle the issues of people of color, because it doesn't help if we here on our own fighting the fight and you just sitting there enjoying the privileges that you're getting. It's not going to help. So that's how we closed the show, and that show is very precious to me. It was done completely from my pocket and the pockets of those that I was partnering with. We did not have external sponsors. As I said, I turned my house into a studio. It was done under very hectic COVID-19 restrictions. So it was a difficult project to put together, but we put it together because of the importance of the message of the ailments and the difficulties that people of color face in musical theatre and in entertainment in general. It's so important. It's so, so important. I can't tell you, I think about the Black Corner every single day. I hear our title sequence song in my brain every day. I was singing it just this morning because I was so heavily invested in that project. Unfortunately, I cannot do it the same way that I did it before because it's not sustainable. However, there are plans, or rather, let me say there is a desire to take it forward. I think it's just a matter of strategizing and, like you're saying, figuring out different channels or partnerships or whatever that can make it happen. I do think that the Black Corner is completely important. Even those 4 episodes that we had, they are so, so powerful that, you know, I'm looking into recreating that, you know, but so let me answer you this way. It is noted on my goal list, but at the moment, there are no practical plans to make it happen again. Hey, dancers are cheeky breed, hey? You know what? If you think the way that we are trained as dancers, we are not trained to be outspoken. We are trained to be bodies. Let's be honest. We're trained to be bodies. We are trained to operate with our bodies. So it becomes tricky when it's time for dancers to have to express themselves verbally because we're not trained like that. If anything, and I'm going to be honest, and maybe some people will not like me for this, but it is the truth that for the powers that be on the authority, it is better for them if dancers are silent. And what tends to happen is that when a dancer becomes outspoken, and this has happened to me a few times, especially when I was 100% just dancing all the way, you know, before I started working on other things. I'm a very outspoken person, and when you become outspoken, you get labeled as the troublesome one, or you get labeled as the older ones that think they know. So what then tends to happen culturally in dance is that you either, you know, as you grow older, you learn more things and you become more confident in yourself. So you know what you will accept and what you won't accept. And what tends to happen in dance is that when that happens, the older ones get, you know, and then the newer ones get broken because they are so quiet and they will just be as they're told and what you want. I'm sure this will offend a lot of people, but it is the truth that I have experienced in that for the authorities, that there are certain choreographers, directors, producers that just prefer if you just say nothing, just say nothing. So it's become a bit of a culture. What I can tell you though is that dancers are the biggest complainers of all the artists. You finish a show at the back of the bus, in the hotel room, in the theater, in the dressing room, after rehearsal, you will always complain that you will never actually action and do what you're supposed to do. The other issue of that is that dancers are constantly threatened with being replaceable. So if you speak up or if you decide to do something, there's always that threat of, well, if you don't want to, there's always the next one, you know. So it's always easier for someone to keep quiet. And that is why a lot of the time dancers will go together and complain And then the next day, we decide tomorrow we'll change the game, we're doing this thing, we're standing up for ourselves. And then there'll be the one person, like a Lesego lady, who decides the next day she's going to be the voice. And all the others that had said they were going to speak with Lesego, maybe had a change of heart during the night. They realize that they might get replaced and lose their job, and then Lesego is out there on her own. And then what then tends to happen is that all the Lesegos that are out there who desire to speak out notice that I'll probably be left at the altar by myself. So it's better for me not to say anything. It's a weird cultural thing that dancers have had for a very long time, and I don't understand where it's coming from. But I'm happy that organizations like the South African Dance Alliance are around, because hopefully those are the kind of things that we will be able to tackle and instill the culture of speaking out as dancers and having a voice. You know, just having a voice, just speaking out and expressing yourself, which is something we don't do. Yeah, the South African Dance Alliance, which actually was, the idea of it was brought about last year in the lockdown, when we realized just how marginalized we are as a sector. And that conversation was going on between myself and Leafy and we used to, all of our conversations on a daily basis, by the way, for all those 5 months of that big lockdown, they were circling around the idea of having this body that can just be there for us, because the main thing is that we did not have a community. When we got into the lockdown, we had nowhere to go. It was everyone for himself and God for us all. So this year, when I was asked to be part of the interim steering committee of the Theatre and Dance Alliance, I was invited by Mike and Han. And sitting in there as an ISC member, and then I realized the people that were sitting in there, we had people from SAGA, which is the South African Guild of Actors, people from, House of Two, different organizations out there that are representing their own sectors. And then myself, Lesego Van Niekerk, is to speak on behalf of the dance sector, and for me that did not feel valid. It did not feel right. I did not feel that anybody doing that on an individual capacity. So I went back to the drawing board, and I speaking to Mike, who's also a mentor of mine, Mike Van Gaan, and going back to the drawing board and saying, look, this is what I picked up in the meeting of the International Committee of the Theatre and Dance Alliance, and I don't think it's right that I sit here and speak for an entire sector. So I thought it's the right thing to do to try and initiate the South African Dance Alliance thing. So put together an ISC from 5 different provinces around South Africa, including legendary people like Regina Thompson, Alfred Henkel, Esther Nessa, and also people in our generation, Epening people that came together and to do this thing to the South African Dance Alliance. And I'm happy to announce that we were formalized as of last week, which means we have a chairperson, we have a deputy chairperson, we've got a national official of 10 people, we've also got a Gauteng representative, a Northern Cape representative, and a Western Cape representative. And the aim of the South African Dance Alliance, of course it's in the name, alliance, we need to align our industry, our sector, the dance sector is so segmented. The ballerinas are there, the Pansola dancers are there, the cultural dancers are there, but also there's just so many unnecessary politics that I'm hoping that through this alliance we can find even ground, and support each other. But more importantly, somebody needs to do the work to advocate for the interests of the dance sector. Nobody does that. Nobody's really concerned about that. Nobody's really concerned about the well-being of dance. We know what dance policies are and how they influence facilities, infrastructure, education, dance education right now is under threat. Our dance education is under threat. We are at the moment producing underqualified and underskilled dancers. It's only particularly when we get into the professional world. We receive these new dancers and we have to put them through a whole other training. So there's so many things that need to be tackled for dancers in this country, and I'm really hoping that the South African dance it's not going to be easy, and I know that, and I know that myself and the rest of the community have our work out because This is unprecedented in our sector. The last time there was a dance alliance was in the early 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, and apparently it was dismantled because they felt there was no need for a dance alliance, which I think was a bad decision, because that is about 20 years of no dance alliance. Can you imagine if that particular dance alliance was still up and running for all these 20 years? Where our sector might have been today, who knows, dancers who have issues with charges. Dancers don't know how to charge confidently and say, this is my work. When you ask them, that is a problem, because it perpetuates this system of people continuously being taken advantage of. People continuously being at the bottom of the thing. So it's time that we flip the script, and I'm hoping this is the organization that's going to help us and bring us all together to do it. It's open for individuals, it's open for dance companies, it's open for institutions, educational institutions, festivals as well. Anybody who operates and makes at least part of their livelihood within the South African dance sector. So if you would like to sign up, you can either go to our Facebook page, and our membership form is pinned right at the top. It's at SADA, at SA Dance Alliance, SADA on Facebook, or you can email sadancealliance@gmail.com. sadancealliance@gmail.com. You can email and say you'd like to be a member, if you can please get the membership form, or as I said, you can just access it directly on our Facebook page, which is pinned right at the top. Yes, so I'd like to start by actually a few days ago, Mbongo, who's the president of I'm for the Arts, she shared on the I'm for the Arts page, she shared a call from the National Arts Council for board members or something of the like. And her call was to say, artists, please apply. We need some of our own in these spaces, right? And I thought that was an important call that she made. I then went into the comments and I read one of the comments, and there was a lady who then said, but Sibongile, why don't you go? And Sibongile's simple answer was, I can't do everything. So that is why, number one, I think that there is space for all of these organizations, because we can't, or South African Dance Alliance can't do everything, just like I'm for the Arts can't do everything. If we all understand what our mission is and our specialization is, we can all hold one branch of a tree and create a massive tree. So first of all, just want to start by saying that there is room for all of these organizations because they're all doing different things. With that said, the STAND Foundation is not a member-based organization. The STAND Foundation is an organization that was brought about in September 2020 by a group of people in the sector who felt that something needed to be done about the state of the arts in our country, because clearly the powers that be were not doing anything, to be quite honest. So STAND Foundation is about sustaining theatre and dance, creating platforms and ways in which we can sustain theatre and dance. So we do that through educational programs like our leadership initiative. We do that through other educational and interactive programs like the Cultural Policy Campus that I know that you also attended yourself. We also create platforms like just 2 months ago, we did the first ever Josie's Comedy Festival, which created work for over 25 artists. So we are not a member-based organization where people come and sign up for us. We are not an advocacy or a representative structure. We are just a structure that is out here trying to support the arts, trying to support dance, trying to support theater in ways that we can, like creating platforms of performance, or creating opportunities of work, or cultivating a new tier of leaders within our ecosystem here, our theatre ecosystem here in South Africa. So that is the STAND Foundation. Then you've got the Theatre and Dance Alliance. That is a member-based structure, and the Theatre and Dance Alliance is the mother body of the theatre sector in essence. So everybody who operates within theatre, and just remember that theatre is not just about the dancers and the actors and the singers. Then you've got the seamstresses, then you've got the crew, then you've got writers, you've got poets, you've got composers, you've got all of these people that form this thing that we know as theatre and dance. So that is the Theatre and Dance Alliance. And under the Theatre and Dance Alliance, you've got those kind of organizations like SAGA, like House of Crew, like South African Dance Alliance, and so on and so forth. Then you've got South African Dance Alliance, which is purely about the business of dance. And somebody might argue and say, but then the Theatre and Dance Alliance, it's also dance. And my argument is no, because the Theatre and Dance Alliance, while yes, they are looking at dance, they're also looking at everything else. So dance will always be pooled into somebody else's pool. And that is how we are always ending up at the bottom of the food chain, because we don't have our own platform. And that is why the South African Dance Alliance is there, to look at solely dance issues that South African dancers face in the sector. So as I said, from my explanation and from the introduction that you gave as well, there's more than enough room for everybody, because everybody is doing different things. Yeah. Yes, I'm co-chair along with you, Thami. And in case nobody knew, yes, myself and Thami are co-chairing, and it's a joint initiative between TADA, Theatre and Dance Alliance, which I will be representing, and I'm for the Arts, which Thami is holding the fort for. So, I mean, really, the Freedom Charter, any charter, is always created with the base of really setting a tone for how people can operate and how people can be respected, nurtured in a space that they call home, in essence. And for artists, our artistic ecosystem is the place that we call home. So it is important that we have a charter like this. And though it is not yet recognized by the powers that be, but it is important that we bring it to their attention, just like the Freedom Charter was brought to the attention of those that make things happen, in essence. We as artists, in the status that you mentioned earlier on, I say that artists are what did I call it? An endangered species. We are an endangered species because even before COVID-19, we're endangered because our rights have never really been respected. To this day, artists are not seen as laborers. To this day, artists struggle for social benefits. To this day, our tax policies are not in favor of artists. That is a problem. Those are human rights that are being violated. And for how much longer are we going to allow that to happen to us for artists, as artists? So I do think that we should all get behind this, because, one of my favorite ones is Clause 10, that says artists have the right to safe physical working environments, including reasonable hours of work where our health and our safety are not compromised. That sounds so simple, but coming from a dance background, that means everything to me, because there's nothing more disrespectful and more just degrading than getting to a stage or any kind of place as a dancer and having to dance on a dirty floor, or having to dance on a floor that's not rigged, or having to operate in a place that has not been ventilated, or all of these things that we take for granted. At the end of the day, that consequence lays on me. I am the one that has to deal with the consequences of that. So it seems like very minor things, but they are minor things that make up our everyday life. There's one of the clauses that speaks about our royalties and our copyright. We've seen over the last years how artists are dying, and dying as paupers, as they so much love to call us. They love to call us dying as paupers. But why are we dying as paupers? We're dying as paupers because our rights are not acknowledged. Our rights are not met. My right to be paid for my work is not acknowledged in South Africa, and that is a real case. So if we don't tackle that, there will be more artists that are dying like paupers, when we all know that in essence we should not be dying as paupers, because we're abundant, we're super abundant, but that abundance is not coming to us. And I think this charter is a channel that we can use to overcome these challenges that I've just highlighted. Yeah, thank you for that, Thami. I think for me, I will just like to encourage those that we identify as the youth, the young people. I would like to encourage us to take a different approach to this thing that we call arts and culture, and this thing that we call our careers, because we see that the approach that we have taken has not worked for us. It's left us right back where we started. So I want to educate people I want to encourage people to educate themselves about their sector, learn about the organizations that are out there. How can you get involved? How can you educate yourself about your sector, because I think part of the problem is that we actually don't understand the sector that we operate in. We don't understand much about what's going on. So, and we're also not involved. We're too far away from the fire. We are allowing things to happen for us as opposed to actually making things happen to us, as opposed to actually making it happen and leaving it in our own hands to make those things happen. So I would just want to encourage the young people to get involved, guys, because this is your sector. Those that came before us, they are moving out slowly but surely, and eventually it's going to be us. And I personally do not like history repeating itself. I really don't. I think it's unnecessary, and I think we can start making steps, but it's going to be up to us, our generation, and the ones that are coming after us, not the ones that came before us. So let's start acting. Let's start getting involved. Yeah.